1. Obligatory, this happened 5 years ago. So there I was, 22 years old, fat with a broken leg, bored out of my mind, and hungry for some action. The incident happened about a year after coming back from Afghanistan, where the air smells like shit, and every day is a battle between suicidal boredom and the deathly thrill of combat. I had broken my leg a few months prior, spiral fracture, right tibia. Boredom from going from an exciting life to a sedentary one, and being immobilized from injury, was hugging my mind like Dwayne Johnson running a vice on both of your temples. One day after browsing Astronomy Picture of the Day archive, I got this idea. I was going to build a badass model rocket and launch this fucker into space. I started my research. I wanted one that was easy enough and powerful enough to satisfy both my lack of intellect and thirst for thrills. Finally, I found the perfect ratio. I can't remember what the model was called, but it was about 1.5 feet long, very light, and had a small circumference. I clicked the overnight delivery option on Amazon because I needed this thing. I needed it like a dog needs to smell or penetrate your asshole with his nose after you fart. So the next day I go to the mailroom. I could almost see a beam of light, an aura if you will, coming from one of the packages sitting on the counter. The clerk walks over, picks that very package up and hands it to me. I quickly signed with an X and bolted to my barracks room. I feverishly opened the box, being just careful enough to not destroy my precious rocket. I got all the pieces out, and they were together in no time. During the construction phase, I noticed that in the instructions it said the engine that came with the rocket would only send it 200 feet into the air. This will not do. I let the 90% complete rocket dry in my cold room overnight, and the next day I went to the hobby store nearest me to buy a better engine. After a few minutes of browsing, finally I had found the one. It was something called the Power Max 9000, or Cockblast 5400 or something like that. On the box it says we'll launch up to 2,500 feet or some shit. So I buy the thing and race back to my nearly complete rocket. I install the engine, which is about 1/4 of the length of the entire rocket and weighs nearly double. I decided that the glue dried quicker than usual and loaded up the rig in my '02 Honda Accord, POS. I also get my buddy P to go with me. I drive to the football field on post, which was right by the hospital and baseball fields. P and I haul my rig to the center of the football field and prepare to launch. The rocket sat on a metal tripod, which had a 4th pole sticking up to support the rocket. The rocket fit on the pole by way of 2 loops on the side of the rocket to guide during launch. It also came with a remote and a single red button that looked like the one Homer Simpson presses to cause a meltdown at his plant. At first it didn't work. We tried over and over to fix it, but we just did not know what was wrong. The anticipation was absolutely killing me. I would have paid God my entire savings just to have that rocket shoot in the air at that moment. Finally, I went right up to the rocket, shoved the wire a little further into its port, and pressed the button. Floom! It took off. It went straight up into the air for about a half second, and then made a 90-degree turn doing 300 miles per hour. The rocket was now on course with the hospital, losing altitude at a downward flight angle. Finally, it just went over the hospital and out of sight. I was still stoked. I was so happy that the thing launched that I didn't care where it went. The police didn't feel the same way. 10 minutes after launch, 3 police cars rushed into the parking lot, aggressively. The officers each got out and drew a firearm, and started towards me in a line. They started shouting, "Show your hands! Show your hands! Hands! Hands!" I put my hands straight up, and then quickly back down to be put into handcuffs. They took me to the MP, military police, station. They told me that depending on how the next hour went, I could be looking at jail time. Oh fuck. All this because I wanted to have fun. I was interrogated by an anti-terror agent. Though he knew I meant no harm, he did have to go through the procedure. He interrogated me for the next half hour. Then the investigator came into the holding room, which was basically just a conference room with a heavy door. He told me that the rocket had smashed into a window, causing an explosion, and shattering it all over a 4-person cubicle. People in the parking lot that had also called thought it was a terrorist attack. Holy fucking fuck! Then he called my commander in front of me. They talked for a minute. Then he put me on the phone with him, and I explained my story to him. My CO was pretty cool about it. He made fun of me, but he wasn't mad. The investigator then informed me that I would be paying a fine, and for a new window at the hospital. I also had to go over to the hospital and apologize to the people that were affected. So, all in all, I thought I got off pretty easy. Granted, it was just a horrible accident. It ended up costing around $1,200 for the window, and 100 hours of community service as my punishment by my CO. However, the hours did count toward a promotion, so he was helping me out. If you ever get any crazy ideas, please do yourself a favor and think twice. You may end up like me, the first white terrorist to ever attack an army base. 2. This actually just happened and I'm dying from embarrassment still. So I stayed the night at my boyfriend's house, and he rents a room above his parents' garage, and he has 3 other brothers and his mom in the house right now. I wake up and get that morning pee feel, you know? So I go downstairs and his older brother is already walking ahead of me to the bathroom. He says he'll be real quick and get me when he's done. No problem, I can wait, right? Well, I wouldn't be writing this TIFU if I had. I go back upstairs and that's when it hit me. I have to shit. So bad. So I wait ever so patiently, each second like an hour, until his brother knocks telling me I can go now. I flew to the bathroom just as I'm crowning. I think no biggie. It felt like a solid hard poo, so I could just flip it out and get a new pair of undies as these go in the wash. Well, I was ever so fucking wrong. Apparently my stomach was not agreeing with my dinner, and it wasn't complete liquid, but still mush. As I try to do the flip, I notice mid-flip that it's not a solid poo, and it gets on my sweatpants, which honestly needed to be washed anyways, and on my pad and my undies. So as I unleash hell, I think of a game plan. I wipe off most of the carnage from my pants, throw away my pad, and wipe off the little bit in my undies. Okay, not as bad as I first thought. I make a plan that goes like this. Finish pooping, shower, wash off the rest of my clothes in the sink, wash the sink, airspray and disinfect everything. No problem. Sweet and simple. Until the toilet starts to fucking clog. I've never unclogged a toilet before. I usually tell my boyfriend and he handles it, because it's usually his brother's fault. But no, now it was mine. And I was not about to ask him to enter the bathroom at that point and unclog it. So that's how I learned how to unclog a toilet. Yay. Step 1 complete. Then I remember I need an extra pair of pants to make it from the bathroom back to my boyfriend's room. So I text him that his brother took too long in the bathroom, and my stress incontinence happened. Which actually happens to me sometimes. It's why I wear the pad during my more stressful days. He starts a wash of clothes and brings me some sleep shorts. Step 2 complete. I shower quickly, seeing as how there was just one affected area, and start step 3. I wash off the remains and then ball them up to hide the wet parts and clean the sink. I then disinfect the toilet counter, floor where I set my gross clothes down, and the sink. I second check everything to make sure I have left no evidence. There is none. I grab the garbage bag which has my gross pad in it so I can throw it away on my way past the garage. I spray some air freshener and put on my sleep pants and leave, throwing the evidence into the washer as I make my way to my boyfriend's room. Also, to add insult to injury, today is our do-over Valentine's Day, because we were both busy on the actual day. And I could finally have sex, after waiting since a little before August due to medical issues, and had planned on surprising my boyfriend with that. Now I feel gross and unromantic. 3. This happened about 3 years ago, but I still get crap for it. I worked in DC, but I flew home constantly to visit my family. I am a typical millennial, and have some super issues with setting realistic time restraints for myself. It drives my dad crazy. He's one of those, if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't bother coming, kind of guys. He thinks I need to be at the airport 3 hours before my flight every time. You know, just in case. Needless to say, I disagree. On one of my flights home to DC, I super underestimated how much time it would take me to pack. Per usual, I wait until 7:30 to start packing for my 9:45 flight. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to find all my crap. All I had was a carry-on, but I had about 3 suitcases full of shit. My mother, the master packer, fitted all into my bag, but it was swollen. Super happy with myself, we got on the road. It was about a 20-minute drive to the airport, but my mom drives like a crazy person, so it usually takes her 10 to 13. I planned for a quick trip, but traffic in our tiny town was out of control. I was so late. I was 10 minutes away from the airport when my flight started boarding. We got to the airport. I quickly kissed my parents goodbye and ran to security. I was shocked to find that no one was in line, and I was a seasoned pro, so I was confident I could still make my flight. I threw my bag on the belt, walked through the x-ray machine, and I hear it. "Ma'am, do you have anything in your bag that could harm yourself or others?" No. I had never, ever had this happen. I was super late and flustered, and I didn't think about my response before I blurted out, "No, sir, but if you touch it the wrong way, it might explode." There were close to 5 to 7 TSA agents standing around, and they immediately stopped and looked over to me. You could have heard a pin drop. In true idiot fashion, I tried to fix what I had just said. No, I mean there's a lot of stuff. If you mess with it too much, it might blow up at the seams. Shit. I was not helping myself. I finally just looked at my feet. I said, "There's nothing dangerous in my bag, I'm just an idiot." I stood there in shock, completely convinced they were about to handcuff me and take me into custody. At this point, there was an audience. More passengers had showed up in security, and still no one had moved. It felt like 10 years later, but eventually the TSA agent who had my bag said, "It looks like nail polish in there, can we search your bag?" I was stunned. I couldn't believe I hadn't been tackled. I said of course they could search it, and they opened it up. They found 2 nail polish bottles stuffed into my running shoes. "Thanks, Mom." And they said I was good to go. At this point, I have about 10 minutes before my flight departs, and I can hear my name over the loudspeaker. "Well, I watch a lot of Disney. Please check in to Gate 2. Last call for DC Flight 1234. I am frantically trying to stuff all my shit back into my bag, still a little confused as to why I'm not in a room somewhere being questioned by the FBI. But I eventually get it done. I'm about to walk away when an older, middle-aged TSA agent walks up to me and says, "How about we think about what we're going to say before we open our mouths next time?" I just nodded in humiliation and started my walk of shame to my gate. I was so late. They were closing the door and they wound up having to check my bag. As the gate was huffing and puffing and doing that, some man walked up to me and said, "That was the funniest shit I've ever seen. You know, if you were a different color, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? Thanks for that." I still can't believe I'm not on the no-fly list. 4. Okay, to give a little bit of background for this story, when I was 7, I was in Whittier Narrows Park in South El Monte, California, just having fun, doing what 7-year-olds do, and rolling on the grass. Little did I know that a beehive was on the ground, and I roll over it. I got stung 57 times, and I grew a fear of bees after the incident. I couldn't even see one without going into a run or fight panic. Okay, so this story is when I was 18 in 2002. Just out of high school, when my 3 friends, brother and I, went to Azusa Canyon to a small river in the mountains for a day of fun. So we were having fun, and we decided to go and explore the upriver. No biggie. Off we go. We walk for about a quarter mile, and there's a bit of shade. What do I see in the shade? A horde of bees. I step back, tell my friends let's go back, and they know about my fear, but tell me to man up, and the bees won't do anything and keep walking. So I'm forced to walk. Now I have my senses sky high and on alert, thinking at any moment they will swarm me and attack. At that moment I see a bee land on my buddy H and scream, "There's a bee in your back!" He tightens his arms to his body and goes underwater, but when he tightens his arms, unknown to him, was that he wedged the bee between him and his armpit. 1 second underwater, and he reacts to the sting and comes up with a bit of pain in his eyes. All I said was, "You took the bee with you." We laugh, and they still want to keep exploring. We walk on the river another 1 mile, and reach a huge shadow area. It was all canopy by trees, and there were thousands of bees. I protested and said, "Let's go back now." My friend HC, M, and my bro C said, "No, keep walking." I'm seriously in a huge panic, and my friend H told me, "Dude, I'll walk in front of you, and we will be good." He's walking in front of me, and another bee lands on him, and I scream, "A bee's on your back!" Only this time he asks me to kill the bee. I said I don't have anything to kill it with. H said, "Kill it with your hand." I was protesting against that, fearing it might sting me. But they all told me just to kill it fast so it doesn't have a chance to sting you or H. With the fear in me and all panic, I swing my open palm towards the bee, breaking the sound barrier and polarizing the bee. I was so happy and paraded my fresh kill to M, C, and brother. Their jaws were opened and amazed. Then M said, "You killed it." But look at H's back. I see H looking up and not moving, screaming or breathing. I think he was trying to process what just happened. I see his back with a very large handprint that was raised on his skin. And all this information sank into me at once in my panic state, and not wanting to give the bee a chance to sting me. I had swung my hand so hard that I literally sent my friend H into instant shock of pain. He was not expecting it and couldn't react to what just happened, and for that I am so sorry. We're still good friends and all, but they always tease me when there are bees around now. 5. Story time. I am a music producer and live artist, touring with my music in various places around the world. Unlike DJs, my performances require a bit of equipment. God, how sometimes I wish all I'd need would be a USB stick. Anyway, usually my routine after arriving at my destination is to set everything up, make sure it's working properly, and do a couple of test runs to feel sure everything will work out fine. For this particular event, I was a few days early. It was a new show, so I wanted to rehearse the show for a bit. The venue had assured me that they had space for me, a nice room with speakers, and all the time I'd need to do whatever I wanted to do. So yeah, that didn't really happen. The nice room with speakers and all the time in the world ended up being a table in a warehouse where they were setting up an expo with a team of 20 people. The speakers were a set of distorting computer speakers, and every time I upped the volume I'd get requests if I could tone it down a bit. So after a few hours of frustration, I decided to ask around in my network if anyone knew a place where I could work in peace. To my surprise and utter shock, I received a response. Mr. Jingles, name replaced for obvious reasons, has a room for you where you can work. His studio is around the corner. Feel free to drop by whenever you want. So Mr. Jingles is a big-time producer in the techno world, like main stage material the world over. I had never met him in person, but he was one of my all-time heroes. Needless to say, I had a mixture of excitement, panic, and, oh my god, this is happening, racing through my mind as I started to pack everything up again. Getting to the real TIFU soon here. 30 minutes, and a wild cab drive later, I found myself at the studio gates. I tried very hard to keep my cool as I rang the doorbell, though I suspect my face might not have played along with that all too well. Someone lets me in, greets me with a welcoming smile and shows me to the studio. My jaw drops. This dude has every piece of equipment one could possibly imagine. Seriously, it's like a synthesizer museum in there. Mr. Jingles is there too, working something that one could only describe as a NASA control panel. He briefly greets me and informs me the person who opened the door will show me to my space. He had to leave soon, but I'd get a key and could come in and out whenever I wanted. 10 minutes later, I am unpacking everything in a lovely control room with a massive set of speakers. It's like a wet dream come true working in a place like this. Mr. Jingles and his host have left the studio, and I was alone in the studio. TIFU time. I think all the emotions, the air travel, this happened the same day I flew in, the frustration of the earlier setup, and the homey feeling in this dream studio all balled together into one inevitable conclusion. I needed to poo. Badly. I hadn't noticed all day, but now my bowels were screaming at me to relieve the tension in my belly. Since no one was there, I figured, coast is clear, so I went for it. Compared to the rest of the studio, the toilet was a bit underwhelming. I don't know what I expected, but this was just your average pooping dock. That said, even a kitty litter box would have been perfect for me. I positioned myself, aligned my rear end with the porcelain launch pad, and declared bombs away. It was massive. Seriously. Those of you who ever take pictures of their produce after being done with their craft, you would have been proud of me. I think I lost a few pounds in one sitting. It was glorious, and I now understand why our common internet hero liked to describe it as justice. Wiping was an undertaking, but I managed. Tossed it on my produce and got up to flush. Right as I pulled the cord, yep, one of those toilets, I read this little note. Pipes are dodgy. Don't flush paper. Within seconds, the water level started rising higher and higher, until about an inch from the rim. The culprit was wedged away right at the airlock, but still in one piece, so I saw it sticking out, right there at the bottom, wound together in a papier-mâché baguette. I looked for something I could use to try and unwedge it. Found a plunger, and gave it a few good pumps before finding out it had a hole in it, preventing it from decent suction. I had the bright idea of trying to fix it with some duct tape, if I could find any. After a scavenger hunt through the studio, I found some tape and a coat hanger to try to break the brick of poo. I fixed the plunger to the best of my abilities, unwound the coat hanger, and poked a few holes in my produce before going at it with the plunger. Damn duct tape did not work. Hole was still there, and now my wonder well had dissolved my produce into a brown, aromatic poop soup. This is where I panicked. What if Mr. Jingles came back and saw what I had done to his bathroom? What would he think of me? And why had I been so stupid to not read the instructions on this alien bathroom prior to unleashing my reserved dinner? I had to fix this. I couldn't find any rubber gloves during my scavenger hunt, but I did see a few trash bags in the kitchen. Brilliant idea. I put my arm into the trash bag and sealed it off around my armpit with duct tape. Nothing would go through. Optimistic as I felt, I plunged my arm into the toilet to find out the bag was leaking at the fingers. I now had a trash bag filled with poo, duct taped to my arm, and pulling out would probably paint the walls a new shade of alt grey. On the other hand, I could not sit there forever. Plus, I wanted to rid myself of this filth I had locked myself into. I decided that while I was there now, I would break the brick into as many pieces as I could, then pull back slowly and try to spill as little as I could. 2 minutes later, I had somewhat succeeded. There was only a few spills, and I had managed to let the water level drop a bit. The bag was soaking, and my fingers felt like I had dough between them. But soon I would be able to solve all this. So yeah, I had the brilliant idea to flush once more, and see if I could flush out the remaining blockage in the process. The water rose and rose and rose at what seemed an accelerating pace. It flooded over the sides, onto the spare rolls of toilet paper, forming a new mesh of brown water tragedy and toilet paper. Bits of pooperish shrapnel covered the floor. I had no idea how much water was held in the tank, but clearly it was enough to flow everywhere over the bathroom floor. Everything was covered in shit, including me. Garbage bag filled with poop chunks, still duct taped to my arm. I gave up. I cleaned up the floor to the best of my abilities, closed the lid on the toilet, threw the stacks of papers and magazines in a garbage bag. This one had no hole in it, washed my arm, put on a fresh change of clothes, and left a note to the door. Do not use. Too much poo. Truly sorry. I left the studio right afterwards and went back to my hotel, giving up on anything the day would bring me. A few hours later, I receive a phone call, and all I can hear is the hysterical laughter of Mr. Jingles, who told me he had received my message. I offered to pay for the plumber, but he told me he had troubles with it all the time. I did not tell him about the true scale of the event, but I think he somewhat got the gist, based on the aftermath of having no more rolls of paper and magazines in his bathroom. I had the best few days afterwards, where I worked at his studio during the day, and he brought me to clubs at night. Oh, the wonders a bit of poo can do. But yeah, word of advice, whenever visiting a bathroom for the first time, be sure to heed the instructions before unleashing hell upon yourself. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Embarrassing Stories, episode 31. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I also want to give a special thank you to I Watch a Lot of Disney, who is the hero of the video. If it wasn't for her, then we wouldn't have a video this week. She was very kind. She gave me permission to use her story, but unfortunately the mods on TIFU are getting a little bit picky these days, and they decided that they were going to delete that story, which that's the one that took place in the airport with the exploding bag. Thankfully, however, she still had the text there, and she was very helpfully agreed just to post a text to me as a reply, which saved the video because I wouldn't have put it up if I didn't have 5. So thank you very much for that. I watch a lot of Disney. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.